Molecular transport is a very important mechanism. So in our bodies, there is this random motion that occurs called Brownian motion. And this is the fact that you have an environment that is aqueous and filled with water. The solutes, ions, macros, sugars, hormones, they're going to move around. As a result of that environment, the natural passive motion that occurs to even out the distribution of solutes is going down the gradient. So whenever you hear the word down the gradient, that means you're going from an area that has a lot of stuff to an area that's more evenly dispersed. And this is going to happen whenever you have non-active, non-energy requiring motion. The contrast to this is when you have active transport. And active transport, because it starts with the letter A, also means it requires ATP. ATP means you have to spend this nucleotide energy to power the motion from an area of low to area of high. So you're going from this way up against the gradient to the area that's going to be more accumulated. And this then relates to the fact that membranes, which is our cell membrane, right? This is going to be our cell membrane. There are permeability rules. The general rule of thumb is small nonpolar solids are always going to have an ability to pass through without any questions asked. The exception to this small was what I said previously, which are charged particles, right? So ions, calcium, potassium, sodium, etc. Those ones are all charged, and as a result, they're highly controlled. Steroid hormones, which we investigated yesterday, also have the ability to bypass that phospholipid bilayer. And then what are impermeable? Well, large polar solutes, the key word is polar, anything that has water-liking properties cannot get through. Simple diffusion is the net movement of particles from an area of high to low, which takes that gradient that we just talked about. And substances are described as moving down their concentration gradient. This happens whether it be in air or in water, and the membrane of the cell has to be present. So this membrane serves as a border that divides two areas. And if you allow diffusion to run its course in this picture, right, eventually this far left picture becomes the far right picture. But if the membrane blocks that off, then there's going to be some kind of force and pressure that's developed. Solutes tend to move independently, but the application to our cell body is that does your cell membrane have the right kind of door or protein channel to allow that molecule to go through? Several other factors could affect it. Temperature plays a big role in rate of diffusion. Osmosis is defined as diffusion of water through a membrane, but this membrane is selective. So I would like to add the word selective to that. And selective just means you have certain kinds of pumps, transporters, channels that can allow selective base chemicals to go through. And osmolarity is change of that fluid around a cell. You have either isotonic, where even sides on both, hypertonic, where one end, typically the ECF, has higher amounts of solutes, and then the hypotonic, where the ICF has a little bit more solutes. And the direction of osmosis is always going to be from a more dilute area, right? So as you can see over here, a more dilute area to an area that is a little bit less diluted, okay? And that's how water would move. So we're strictly talking about water motion here. There is one kind of channel that is applicable to our body called the aquaporin. AQUAPORIN, aquaporin channels. And these are dedicated water gate channel proteins which could be increased or decreased in areas of like your kidneys if your body is trying to retain water. So imagine you're dehydrated and you haven't drank water the whole day. Hormones can bind to receptors in your kidneys to increase the number of aquaporin channels, and now your body, as the blood passes through your kidneys, more of the water is retained. So there are subclasses of diffusion. Facilitated diffusion is defined as when you have a carrier protein dedicated to move a solute or chemical down its gradient. You can also have a carrier protein which has a dedicated shape. You can see it's round, and that can only bind these round oval purple chemicals and it opens one end, opens to the other. Some channels in our body are a little bit more unique. They could be controlled via a change in voltage. And voltage means, in our terms, just a difference in charge. So one side of our cell, let's say this is the ECF, and the other side would be the ICF. One side tends to have a little bit more number of ions. And we can just imagine that the outside has a couple more sodium ions. So let's say you have 3 sodium ions on the outside, 3 of these guys. And on the inside, you have 1 sodium ion. Right? Even though it's both positive charges, because the outside has 3 sodium, it creates the overarching higher number of positive charges. So in reference, we would refer to the inside as the negative side. And in this case, what you're seeing is that some receptors, namely in your nervous system, will respond to a change in charge. And in our terms, we can call these VGCs. Just to make life a little easier, abbreviations really do help. So VGCs are going to be voltage-gated channels. And then you can also have some that are considered ligand-gated channels, LGCs. Okay, LGCs. And these ones are whenever a specific hormone or chemical docks onto its receptor, then that door opens up. And then another one you can also have is when you have the ligand-gated channel that opens intracellularly. This one is unique because nothing is happening on the outside, which means something else nearby would occur. And then as a result, on the intracellular side, something can bind to that receptor and cause a change. The last one that we have is one that is considered more of a cytoskeletal component. So it creates a structural integrity. And these ones are sensed by mechanical sensitive. So there's a change in shape, a stretching, a pulling, a pressure that disrupts the cell, the shape. And that will then cause the doors to either open up or close.